Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. You know how it is. It's January. Everyone's got that New Year energy going on. Those resolutions are fresh in our minds. We're feeling optimistic.
Ready to conquer the world.
Right, exactly. But then February rolls around, and those big plans, those goals, we set with such conviction, well, they kind of start to fade, don't they?
It's a familiar story, isn't it? Especially for our listeners, busy professionals juggling careers, families, maybe even caring for aging parents.
Yeah. I think a lot of people in that 40 to 60 age group can relate to that feeling of, starting the year with the best intentions, but then life just gets in the way.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking we just need more willpower, more discipline, but there's actually a fascinating psychological phenomenon at play here.
Oh, tell me more.
It's called the fresh start effect. Have you ever noticed how even a simple Monday can feel like a mini fresh start, a chance to hit the reset button and start anew?
Oh, totally. It's like that clean slate feeling, whether it's a new year, a new week, even just a new day. It gives us that boost of motivation, like we can finally become that ideal version of ourselves.
Exactly. But here's the catch. That feeling, that surge of motivation, it's often fleeting.
Isn't it, though? It's like a sugar rush.
Yeah.
Get that initial burst of energy, but then it fizzles out, and we're back to our old habits.
Precisely. And that's because while the calendar might offer us a symbolic fresh start, our brains don't magically rewire themselves overnight.
Right. We can't just flip a switch on January 1st and expect all those deep-seated habits to vanish.
Exactly. Those habits, those ingrained patterns of behavior, they're still there, lurking beneath the surface.
So it's not just about making a decision to change. It's about understanding how our brains actually work, how habits are formed and broken.
Absolutely. Think of your brain as a vast network of paths carved through a forest. The more you walk a particular path, the more ingrained it becomes. Habits are like those well-worn paths, and creating new ones requires carving new routes, which takes time and consistent effort.
Okay, so if habits are like these ingrained paths in our brains, how long does it actually take to carve a new one?
Research suggests it can take anywhere from 18 to 66 days for a new habit to stick.
Wow, 66 days. That's over 2 months. No wonder we get discouraged when we don't see results immediately.
Right. And it's not always a linear process. There will be days when you effortlessly glide down that new path, and others when it feels like you're hacking through dense undergrowth.
So it's a journey with ups and downs, twists and turns. But understanding the mechanics of how habits work can make that journey a lot smoother, don't you think?
Absolutely. And that's why I want to introduce you to a simple but powerful concept. It's called the habit loop, and it explains the cycle of how habits are formed and maintained.
A habit loop. Okay, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
All right, imagine a circle with 3 points. Cue, routine, and reward.
Cue, routine, reward. Got it.
Like a cue is the trigger that sets the habit in motion. It could be a time of day, a location, an emotion, or even a particular sequence of events.
Okay, so let's say my goal is to cut back on those afternoon cookies I always seem to reach for. The cue for that habit might be that 3 p.m. slump when my energy dips and I need a little pick-me-up.
Exactly. The cue triggers the routine, which is the behavior itself, the habit you're trying to change or establish.
So in my case, it's heading to the break room and grabbing those cookies.
And then comes the reward, which is the satisfying feeling, the payoff that reinforces the habit and makes you want to repeat it.
Which for me is that sugar rush and temporary feeling of comfort those cookies provide.
Precisely. And this loop, this cue routine reward cycle, spins continuously reinforcing the habit over time.
So to break an unwanted habit or establish a new one, we need to understand how to interrupt this loop or redirect it toward a more desirable outcome.
You got it. It's about becoming aware of those cues and rewards and then finding ways to either disrupt the cycle or replace the unhealthy behavior with a healthier one.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But even if we understand this habit loop, there's still that whole issue of setting realistic goals right. I mean, we tend to get a bit ambitious with those New Year's resolutions, don't we? It's like we're setting ourselves up for failure before we even begin.
Oh, absolutely. We often fall into the trap of trying to change too much at once. Imagine you're at a buffet piled high with delicious food. You want to try it all, so you pile your plate sky high.
That's me every time. Eyes bigger than my stomach. But then I end up feeling stuffed and overwhelmed, and I can barely enjoy any of it.
Exactly. It's the same with our resolutions. We set these massive goals like, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, run a marathon, and learn a new language, all at the same time.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to juggle too many balls at once.
Yeah.
Eventually, something's got to give.
And when we try to change too many things at once, we overwhelm our brains, especially a region called the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for decision-making and willpower.
So my brain is basically saying, whoa, hold on. I can't handle all this change at once.
You could say that. And when the prefrontal cortex gets overloaded, guess what happens?
We give up. We fall back on our old habits.
Exactly. We revert back to those familiar patterns of behavior. They're like that comfy pair of slippers. They require less effort, even if they're not the most stylish or supportive choice.
So even if we have the best intentions, our brains might be working against us, especially when we set unrealistic goals.
That's why one of the most effective strategies for lasting change is to start small.
Start small. That sounds a lot less daunting than those massive life-altering resolutions we often make.
It is. Instead of aiming for a complete overhaul focus on one specific change at a time, it's about creating small wins that build momentum and confidence.
Okay, so instead of saying I'm going to become a health nut, maybe it's I'm going to swap my sugary afternoon snack for a piece of fruit 3 times this week. That feels a lot more manageable, right?
Exactly. And those small changes allow us to carve those new pathways in our brains, gradually, without overwhelming our mental landscape.
So it's like we're building a solid foundation for change, one brick at a time.
Exactly. And speaking of building a solid foundation, let's talk about SMART goals, a fantastic tool for setting ourselves up for success.
SMART goals. I've heard of them, but remind me how they work.
SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So instead of a vague goal like eat healthier, a SMART goal would be, I'm going to replace my sugary afternoon snack with a piece of fruit 3 times a week for the next month.
Okay, I see the difference. It's much more concrete and actionable, not just a wishful aspiration floating around in my head.
Exactly. And when you achieve those smaller SMART goals, it creates a sense of accomplishment, little dopamine hit that reinforces the positive behavior and keeps you motivated to keep going.
So it's like those small wins are paving the way for bigger changes down the line, like dominoes falling one after another.
Precisely. But let's be honest. Even with the best laid plans, we're all human. There will be times when we slip up, when those old habits creep back in.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all been there. But what do we do when that happens? How do we avoid spiraling into that all too familiar feeling of defeat? Yeah, it's so easy to get discouraged when we have that slip up. It's like all that progress we made just goes out the window.
I hear that. But what if, instead of viewing those slip-ups as failures, we saw them as valuable data points?
Data points. Okay. I like where you're going with this. Tell me more.
Think about it. Like those experiments we all did in science class, not every experiment yields perfect results, right?
Definitely not. I remember a few explosions in the chemistry lab. Nothing too serious, though.
Exactly. The point is, it's about learning from the process, adjusting our approach, and trying again.
So instead of throwing in the towel when we miss a workout or indulge in a little too much cake, we use those experiences to understand what went wrong and how we can do better next time.
Exactly. It's about adopting what's called a growth mindset, a belief that our abilities and intelligence aren't fixed, but can be developed through effort and learning.
Ah, the growth mindset. I love that concept. So it's about embracing the journey, the ups and downs, and understanding that setbacks are a natural part of the process.
Precisely. With a growth mindset, challenges become opportunities for growth, and setbacks become stepping stones on the path to success.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective. It takes the pressure off striving for some unattainable ideal. It allows us to embrace the journey bumps and all.
Right, it's about progress, not perfection.
I love that. Progress, not perfection. We should make that our new mantra.
I'm all for it. But even with a growth mindset, we still need strategies to help us navigate those inevitable challenges. We talked about starting small and setting SMART goals. What other tools can help us make those healthy habits stick?
Well, there are some fantastic tools out there that can make healthy choices easier and more manageable. You've probably heard of calorie tracking apps. But have you ever heard of Sugar Points? Sugar Points. Yeah, it rings a bell. It's a system for tracking sugar intake, right? To help you make healthier choices.
You got it. And I'm bringing this up because remember how we talked about the habit loop? Well, tracking your sugar intake can help you become more aware of those cues and rewards that drive those sugary cravings.
So it's not about deprivation or strict rules. It's about making more informed choices and understanding the impact of those choices on our health and well-being.
Precisely. It's about shining a light on those hidden sources of sugar that we might not even realize we're consuming. You know, those healthy snacks that are actually loaded with sugar.
Oh yeah, I've definitely fallen into that trap before.
Sugar Points can help you see those hidden sugars and make more conscious decisions about what you're putting into your body.
So it's like a little detective tool, helping us uncover those sugary culprits that are sabotaging our efforts.
Exactly. And I actually have a great example of how Sugar Points can be a game changer. Remember Lisa, our busy entrepreneur who was struggling with late-night snacking?
Oh, Lisa. Yes, I was wondering when she'd be making a reappearance in our conversation. Fill me in. What happened with Lisa?
Well, remember how we talked about those well-worn paths in the brain? For Lisa, that late-night work session became a powerful cue that triggered her routine of reaching for that bowl of ice cream.
Ah, yes, the classic late-night sugar craving. We've all been there.
And the reward, of course, was that temporary feeling of comfort and stress relief that the sugar provided.
So it wasn't just about the taste of the ice cream. It was about the emotional need it was fulfilling, a way to cope with the stress of her busy day.
Precisely. And this is where things get really interesting. We often focus on the surface level of our habits, what we're doing. But to truly understand why resolutions fail, we need to look deeper at the emotional landscape beneath.
Okay, so it's not just about willpower or even those habit loops we talked about. There's an emotional component at play here.
Absolutely. Think back to Lisa. Her habit wasn't just about the sweet treat itself. It was a way to cope with stress, to find a moment of comfort at the end of a long, demanding day.
That makes so much sense. We often use food or other behaviors to try to soothe those uncomfortable emotions. It's like we're reaching for a quick fix, even if it ultimately doesn't address the underlying issue.
You've hit the nail on the head. And when we try to change the behavior without addressing the underlying emotional need, we're setting ourselves up for a struggle. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that needs stitches.
So if we want to create lasting change, we need to ask ourselves, what's the why behind my habit? What emotional need am I trying to meet?
Exactly. For Lisa, it was about acknowledging that she was using ice cream as a coping mechanism for stress. Once she understood that, she could start to explore healthier ways to meet that need.
Like what? What did Lisa do to break free from that late-night ice cream habit?
She started incorporating relaxation techniques into her evening routine. Things like taking a warm bath, reading a book, or practicing some gentle yoga stretches. It's about finding what truly nourishes you, both physically and emotionally.
So instead of just trying to suppress those stressful feelings, she found healthier outlets to process and manage them.
Precisely. And this applies to so many of our habits. We might reach for that extra glass of wine after work, not because we're truly thirsty, but because it helps us unwind or temporarily numb out from the day's pressures.
It's like we're trying to fill a void with these behaviors,
Right.
even if they're not truly serving us in the long run.
Exactly. And it's important to acknowledge that there's no shame in this. We all have our own ways of coping with stress and difficult emotions. But by becoming aware of those patterns and exploring healthier alternatives, we can start to break free from those less than ideal habits.
But how do we actually do this? How do we uncover those emotional triggers driving our behaviors? Is there some secret formula?
It starts with self-awareness. Pay attention to your thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations when you engage in the habit. What were you feeling just before you reached for that bag of chips or scrolled through social media for hours? What were you thinking? Where were you?
So it's about becoming a detective of our own emotions, noticing those patterns that might be driving our behaviors.
Exactly. And journaling can be a powerful tool for this. Write down those thoughts, feelings, and situations that lead you to engage in the habit over time. You might start to see some recurring themes emerge, those aha moments where you realize, oh, that's why I always do that.
Okay, let's say we've done the detective work. We've identified those emotional triggers. What's the next step? How do we actually address them in a healthy way?
Once you understand the why, you can start to explore alternative ways to meet that emotional need. For example, if stress is a trigger for overeating, instead of reaching for comfort food, you could try going for a walk in nature, listening to calming music, or spending time with loved ones. It's about finding what truly nourishes you, both physically and emotionally.
So it's about having a toolbox of healthy coping mechanisms that we can draw from when those cravings or urges hit.
Exactly. And it's about being patient with ourselves. This process takes time and experimentation. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. What works for one person might not work for another. It's about honoring our individual needs and preferences and finding what resonates with us on a deeper level.
It's like we're all scientists in our own lives, experimenting with different approaches until we find what works best for us.
I love that. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about progress, not perfection. There will be slip-ups along the way. The key is to view those setbacks as learning opportunities, not as failures.
So we've talked about the importance of understanding the emotional why behind our habits. But what about those tools and strategies we discussed earlier, like sugar points and setting SMART goals? Do those still play a role?
Absolutely. Those tools and strategies are still incredibly valuable. In fact, they can be even more effective once we have a deeper understanding of our emotional triggers.
Okay, I'm seeing how it all fits together now.
Yeah.
It's like we're building a house. Understanding those emotional triggers is like laying a strong foundation, and then those tools and strategies become the building blocks we use to create lasting change.
I love that analogy. And just like building a house, it's a step-by-step process. We start with the foundation, then we gradually add the building blocks one at a time until we have a solid, sustainable structure.
So where do we go from here? We've explored the why. We've talked about tools and strategies. We've even touched on the importance of mindset. What's the next layer of this resolution puzzle?
Well, we focus a lot on the individual, on understanding our own habits and motivations. But there's another powerful factor that can influence our success: our environment.
Our environment. Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. Tell me more about how our surroundings influence our ability to stick to those resolutions.
Okay, so our environment can either help or hinder our resolutions.
Gotcha. I'm starting to think about my home office. Maybe I need to rearrange some things to make it more conducive to focusing.
It's all about those little nudges, the subtle cues that can either steer us towards our goals or pull us right back into those old patterns.
So like if I want to start meditating more, maybe I should create a little Zen corner in my apartment with a comfy cushion and some calming candles.
Exactly. It's about setting yourself up for success by creating an environment that supports the behaviors you want to cultivate.
So it's not just about willpower. It's about being strategic about our surroundings.
Think about it this way. Our environment is constantly sending us signals, little nudges that influence our choices, often without us even realizing it.
Like subliminal messages.
In a way, yes. These cues can either support those healthy habits we're trying to build or pull us right back into those old, comfortable patterns.
Okay, so let's say my goal is to eat more fruits and vegetables. If I keep a bowl of fresh fruit on my kitchen counter, it's a visual reminder to grab a healthy snack. But if my pantry is stocked with chips and cookies, well, those become the more tempting choice simply because they're readily available.
Exactly. It's about making the healthy choice the easy choice by creating an environment that aligns with your goals.
Makes sense. So it's not just about what we see, it's also about what we surround ourselves with.
Absolutely. Think about those mornings when you hit the snooze button multiple times versus those days when you bound out of bed ready to tackle the day.
Oh yeah, I know those mornings well.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Why am I so much more productive on some days than others?
Often it's the environment we've created the night before. Having your workout clothes laid out and your coffee prepped makes it much easier to stick to those morning rituals.
Oh, I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
I have my entire morning routine mapped out down to the playlist that gets me energized for the day. It definitely makes a difference in how I feel and how productive I am.
Right. It's those little things that can make a big difference.
But it's not just our physical environment that matters, right? We also have to consider the people we surround ourselves with.
Absolutely. Our social environment can have a huge impact on our behaviors. Think back to Lisa, our entrepreneur, battling those late-night snacking habits. Part of her success came from creating a supportive network.
Oh yeah, Lisa. She confided in a few close friends about her goal.
Right. And they became her cheerleaders.
Exactly. They offered encouragement, checked in on her progress, and helped her stay accountable.
The power of accountability. I found that having a workout buddy or even just someone to share my healthy recipes with makes a world of difference in my motivation. Right. If everyone around you is ordering pizza and fries, it's much harder to stick to your salad.
It's true. Food can be so social. It's tough to resist those temptations when everyone else is indulging.
But if you're surrounded by people who are also striving to make healthy choices, you can support each other, share tips, and even celebrate those small victories together.
It's like finding your tribe, those people who understand your journey and who lift you up, rather than those who might unintentionally sabotage your efforts.
Exactly. And in our digital age, we also have to consider the impact of our online environment.
Oh yeah, social media. That's a whole other beast.
It can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can connect us with like-minded people and provide inspiration and support.
But on the other hand, it's easy to get caught up in the comparison game. Seeing everyone's seemingly perfect lives and feeling inadequate.
Exactly. The constant barrage of social media posts showcasing perfect bodies, elaborate meals, and seemingly effortless success can create unrealistic expectations and make us feel discouraged.
Oh, tell me about it. Sometimes I feel like I need a digital detox just to escape the pressure of trying to keep up with everyone's seemingly perfect lives online.
It's so important to be mindful of the content we consume and to curate our digital environment just like we do with our physical space.
So instead of following accounts that make me feel envious or insecure, I should seek out those that inspire me, motivate me, and align with my values.
Exactly. Fill your feed with positivity and support. And remember, you have the power to unfollow or mute accounts that don't serve you.
That's so true. We often forget that we have control over our online experience.
And speaking of control, let's talk about the power of language. If we constantly tell ourselves, I can't resist that, or I'll never be able to do that, we're reinforcing those negative beliefs and setting ourselves up for failure.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that negative self-talk. It's like a broken record sometimes.
But if we shift our language to be more positive and empowering, I'm choosing to make a healthier choice. I'm learning and growing each day. We're creating a more supportive internal environment that fosters resilience and growth.
It's like giving ourselves that pep talk we all need sometimes, reminding ourselves that we're capable of change and that we're on this journey for a reason.
Exactly. And that growth mindset we talked about earlier plays a huge role here. It's about viewing challenges as opportunities for learning and those inevitable setbacks as temporary bumps in the road, not as reasons to give up.
So it's about being kind to ourselves, embracing the journey, and focusing on progress over perfection.
Precisely. And when we combine that compassionate mindset with a supportive environment, both physical and digital, we create a powerful force for positive, sustainable change.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. We've uncovered those hidden patterns that sabotage our resolutions, explored the power of our environment, and discovered practical strategies for creating lasting change. It feels like we've gone beyond just willpower and motivation. We've tapped into a deeper understanding of how our minds and our surroundings work together to shape our behaviors.
We have, and remember, it's not about mastering all of these elements overnight. It's about taking it one step at a time, experimenting, learning, and finding what works best for you, your individual needs, and your lifestyle.
As we head into this new year, instead of just setting resolutions, maybe we should be thinking about what experiments we want to run in our lives. What small changes can we make? What can we learn from the process? And how can we turn those insights into lasting growth?
What a fantastic way to frame it. It's not about striving for some unattainable ideal. It's about embracing the journey of continuous learning and growth. And who knows, you might even discover some surprising things about yourself along the way.
That's such an empowering takeaway. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of resolutions and for sharing these incredibly insightful strategies. It's not just about achieving those goals, it's about creating a more fulfilling and empowered life. Here's to a year of growth, discovery, and those delightful surprises that come with embracing the journey of change.